GM, Make It Rain fans, welcome to a Super Bowl edition of Make It Rain, the final episode of the year. I am happily joined by our hosts, Theric, Ruthless, Jake, and JJ. Gentlemen, what are we cooking for Super Bowl Sunday?
Ooh. Hopefully something delicious. Hopefully $100,000 here.
That would be sweet. That would be sweet. Yeah, looking like a good one. They got tons of prizes and a good payout structure for these. So happy to dive into these contests pretty soon.
If anyone is making buffalo chicken dip, send me an invite because that's my favorite Super Bowl.
Buffalo chicken dip is the alpha, 100%. I'm with you there. Good call, Big Ruth. Yeah, it looks like a nice juicy slate lined up for Super Bowl Sunday. Obviously, just one game, right? It's the big one. So we're relegated to a showdown slate here. A couple minor injuries to parse through. We'll get into some of that, but. JJ, are you playing the week different? Obviously, it's a showdown, right? So, how are you strategizing your lineups this week, and how are you approaching the process?
Man, can I just say that I wish I didn't tax loss harvest all my things before the new year because I had some amazing cereals going into this contest. But like we always say, eyes forward. But I'm gonna try to get really different with this one, just because if you want a good cereal for this showdown, you are paying a hefty premium at this point. A lot of the good deals probably got scooped up 2 weeks ago, maybe even last week. You could still have gotten some good cereals, but now, good luck getting anything in the top 20 for a decent price. So I think the key here is to get different, play two to three defenses in a couple lineups, just because I don't think anyone's playing that for this one. And yeah, just try to be different enough and hopefully rise to the top.
Yeah, that's hoping a good point. Yeah, go ahead, Derek.
I was going to say, hoping some of those stars just kind of dud out and that there's someone that a Kadarius Toney or Quez Watkins or something stupid like that just goes off for 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, I think the KC wide receiver core is interesting because there's so many injuries. I haven't actually checked. I'm not 100% sure on who's playing and who's not. But I know Hardman's out, and even if Juju is in, he's not he hasn't been a part of the offense. They're just spreading around. Maybe Sky Moore comes into play. Who knows? I think that's that'll be an interesting way to get different.
Yeah, I think Juju is playing as an update there. He's a full participant. Kadarius Toney's playing as well. He's a full participant. So,
anybody going to risk playing Clyde Edwards-Helaire and seeing if he suddenly goes off or?
Nope, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Really a cheap elite card.
That is kind of the cool thing about the slate. Usually, in showdown slates or one game slates, you should say, maybe it's a little more difficult to get unique, with because some of the funnels that some teams, give you in terms of players that actually might be able to put up some points. Between the Chiefs and the Eagles both, there are some thinner plays that make sense in the right script that can actually help make yourself unique, just by the function of their offenses. So that is kind of a fun angle, I think, for this Super Bowl slate. There's a lot of players to choose from that could make an impact.
Do you think let's say, so I guess to the viewers or for more on a strategy scope, do you think that you should have one lineup that is always chalk, or do you think you should sometimes I feel I couldn't do that and I'm not going to have the best cereals and I'm just going to take my EV and move on. But at the same time, I could just make a couple different pivots, have 2 different lineups or something. And all of a sudden now we have opportunity to win it all. Do you think it's better to go one chalk and then one off the board, or 2 that are slightly different?
Yeah, I think it depends primarily on your cereals, right? If you have, a total cereal score of 20 or less, maybe even 30 or less in some showdowns, you just play the chalk and you just take that higher expectation of a good payout and let everyone else get different, right? You just play optimal in that case.
Yeah.
And then if you have between like the 30 and 100 range, that's when you need one pivot that'll probably still win it. And then, if you're talking 300, 500 zero range, then you'll need two pivots. But you don't have to get too different is what we all, I think, realized throughout the season, right? The strength of those pivots will vary a lot and get you very differentiated. Like, for example, Ruthless, when you had the 2 defense, not a lot of people play that, right? 2 defense from the same team along with like 2 optimal players. And that's just something we realized, I think, through the course of the season. And I think Jake played it really well with his strategy of just trying to predict who's going to be in the Super Bowl, right? And then picking up those players well ahead of time. So he can now play optimal if he wants to with those good serials. But yeah, that's just what I think. Curious to hear what you guys' thoughts are.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. You kind of got to think about, I guess it also maybe it's like a little bit of risk tolerance too. Like if you want to like at least like try and cash, then it would definitely make sense to like play the EV one, even if the best EV one, even if it's bad serials or the highest projected, I should say, even though it's the best serials. But if you like really want to win it all, then like that's not going to get it done. If you don't have good enough serials, there's inevitably going to be people, probably multiple lineups that are ahead of you, and then you're sacrificing a very large part of the prize pool, really, because it's so top heavy. 100K to first in elite, for example, and in a 300K contest, that's 33% of the prize pool right there that you just are giving up, and then 50K to second, and that's like, you're already at like half the prize pool that you just gave up, and because you didn't want to like go off the board as much. So I think it's just something to think about. Personally, I try to go for it all. I like the high variance, trying to get first because I want to have exposure to the overall prize, or else I'm giving up like a ton of EV. Either way, even though it is higher variance, and most of the time I'm not going to cash as much, but when I do cash, I want to cash big. So
yeah, I think that you also present a good point about there just isn't that much of it's not no one gets, a lot of people just play their cards, There's like there's a lot there. Yeah, sure. There's a lot of whales, but like there's also a lot of people who are just like, I have this. I mean, that's kind of what I'm doing this week because since he didn't make the Super Bowl and I got rugged pretty hard there, but still like the field size is relevant too when you're doing that. So like elite 1,000 players, maybe it'll be like 1,200 teams or whatever, or like 1,200 entrants. Sorry. That you should maybe get a little different, like here and there, but like at rare or like core, like you definitely need to have the top serials or just go off the board there. Like with what it'll be like 6,000, 7,000, maybe more.
At the same time, it's like you don't need to get like too incredibly creative, even if you get like 2 other duplicates. As long as you have decently low serials, you'll still be making a lot of money just because they made this, entire slate like a normal slate where the prizes are 100K for first on elite and 20K for first on rare and everything like that. So even if you got 3rd or 4th place because you duplicated a lineup with 3 people that had higher serials, and you're still making a lot more money than normally you would in a showdown slate. So
what's nice about this slate is because it's 2 good offenses, there's a lot of options that could be the best captain. So that'll naturally kind of differentiate ownership a good amount. With it being, Mahomes, Hurts, AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, Kelsey, they all could be, the top captain easily. And that's 5 different players. And then there's also like the secondary guys who could be too, maybe Miles Sanders or McKinnon, or if Pacheco has a big day, or one of the wide receivers for Kansas City, who knows, Valdez-Scantling was last time. It could be, Juju this time. Could be Kadarius Toney this time. So it's kind of nice that we do have some spread out options, which will lead to more opportunity to build a little bit more unique, and you don't have to go insanely off the board, and you'll still have a pretty good lineup that has a chance and won't get duped in this time.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, I mean, we've seen it throughout the entire season. JJ saw it where people are really scared of not playing the absolute chalkiest captains. Like we're going to see Mahomes and Hurts be the top two captains, and then probably Kelsey and AJ Brown will be the other two, and then it's just going to have a steep drop off. For whatever reason, people don't like playing Devonta Smith nearly as much as AJ Brown, even though the last couple of games Devonta Smith has had just much better games. But regardless, if you did like a Miles Sanders captain or like Jerick McKinnon or Devonta Smith or whatever, by just doing that instead of putting Jalen Hurts or Patrick Mahomes in the captain slot, you're going to completely differentiate, just because everybody, especially with how big these prize pools are, people are going to be so scared of just wasting their entries by putting a non-optimal captain in, and it's just going to be, well, I could put Miles Sanders in a captain, but I could just make no money. I'd rather just make a few $100, and I'll just keep Patrick Mahomes in as captain, and so that's what we're going to see a ton of.
Yeah, and we've seen it multiple times, even with the Eagles themselves, where Dallas Goedert wins you the captain, and no one plays it, right? Just because why wouldn't you put Jalen Hurts there if you're spending $600 to $800 on his card? Same thing with Lamar Jackson or his showdowns as well. But yeah, I think there's a good chance you can differentiate just by a little pivot here. Even just playing a kicker, right? You can play the optimal captain and play one or two of the kickers and be very different, I think.
Harrison Butker wins somebody $100,000.
I think there was a week that JJ was like, "Yeah, I want to play a kicker this week," or so, and
that was last week.
Yeah, Butker had so many points, or one of them just or maybe it was like they had 15, or one week Maher had like 19.
Yeah, I don't think that was last week, but last week it didn't work out. But that other week, you needed the kicker to win. And this week it was weird. This last week, 2 weeks ago at this point, it was, what was the optimal? It was like Miles Sanders, Christian McCaffrey. It was like two running backs from the same game, and it's kind of hard to get on that lineup, especially with the scoring. The Vegas totals the way that we had projected them, right? Everyone was on the late game, and I don't think many people played Miles Sanders with McCaffrey, and so that was ended up being the difference.
He's been in optimals multiple times this season, but it's just he's either going to put up 30 points or he's going to put up 5, and so people depending on who gets those rushing touchdowns. If Jalen Hurts runs them in, then Miles Sanders is going to be awful. If Jalen Hurts doesn't run them in, then he's going to, and they do get multiple rushing touchdowns, he's probably going to crush. And so it's just so scary because it's also a bet that Jalen Hurts won't be one of the top guys you need. And so a lot of people are just going to assume it goes that way, even though we've seen it already multiple times this season where they just crush on the ground and just let Miles Sanders do his thing and don't worry about throwing it that much because they didn't need to.
He's such all year. I think Miles Sanders is kind of similar to maybe Devin Singletary, and even like Cook and Gainwell as a comparison. Actually, is like the secondary, because like Gainwell went off a couple weeks ago or before, and then any running backs are so huge for leverage too. Because like when Sanders goes off, all the other players, like you said, just don't do well. Like you just have to understand you're going to lose when Sanders or when Jalen Hurts actually goes off. Yeah,
it's like maybe he throws AJ Brown gets 7 for 102 and 1, but Jalen Hurts doesn't do much. Devonta Smith doesn't do much. They do fine. Jalen Hurts could put up 225 and 1 and maybe get 30, 40 rushing yards, but he's just not going to be in the optimal because of that. If they're scoring, Devonta Smith gets 7 for 85 or whatever, which is 15. But in a game like this, that may not be the top 4 scores too. So you just got to kind of when you're playing like that, you're not assuming that Philly's going to suck. You're more assuming that Philly's going to do decent through the air, but they just crush on the ground. And so they still are able to put up 35, but 3 of those 5 touchdowns were rushing by Gainwell and Sanders.
Yeah, and on that note, I think Sanders plus Gainwell is probably going to be very low owned, especially at the the higher tiers.
I don't know if I have the
The stones to do
Play
that. Yeah.
It's all really good food for thought. Yeah, sometimes the best way to get unique is just telling yourself a story and building your lineup around that story. And if it hits, it hits. That's part of it. So.
I mean, and you also just got to ask yourself: are you fine with min cashing, or do you want to go all in? Like you can min cash easily. Just put in, choose one of Mahomes, Hurts, put in Travis Kelce, put in AJ Brown or Devonta Smith, and someone else for the fourth one, and just you'll probably min cash. You'll probably split it. If you won't split it, but I mean, you'll probably not do as well as the other 20 people that got lower cereals and played that exact lineup, but you'll make something, but you're probably not going to take it down. If you get more unique, you could be last place, but you could also easily be first place and solo ship it, even with bad cereals, just because nobody had the balls to do it but you.
For sure. And that's also what you have to kind of decide in your lineup creation strategy, right? Is, if you do want to make stands, how big of a stand do you want to make on a certain player or a certain lineup construction versus how much variety do you want from lineup to lineup? Do you really want to go for the glory, or do you just want a chance at cashing and calling it a day and being happy with it? Definitely a lot of different ways to play it that way. A lot of good stuff there. One thing I did want to ask you guys, just kind of as we're closing out the season here, for Reignmakers specifically, and we've had some of these conversations throughout the course of the season, but just for a little roundtable here, if you were to have one thing going into next season where Reignmakers fired back up again, what's one thing that you would like to see Reignmakers start up 2023 season of Reignmakers having changed or adjusted or improved to make your experience better for next year? Rufus, you want to start there?
I mean, I think it's kind of unfortunately, Jake mentioned something a while back that just stuck with me. So hopefully this wasn't his answer, but the showdown sometimes can get a little gross, or actually specifically like the holiday tournament where like I guess it wasn't showdown, but like when you just have cereals dictating so much of the prize pool, like because like you just didn't spend up or whatever, but you had the nut lineup, which is all right. Like how many times did you have the best lineup this season? Like it probably happened a handful of times if you're lucky already. And then to actually have that and then still lose just because like you have like 47 when someone has like 46 or something. I've seen, that happened in Reignmaker with Smizzle. It was like a 50K to 20K or whatever. And it's just like, that just feels so brutal. Like I get it. I think cereals should be relevant, but I wish there was another way. And I remember like Jake maybe said like, have like, or like a worse position, like a role player like card or something where you just have like, all right, the Sky Moores and the Gainwells, like anyone who's not a normal starter or something. I don't know what the fix is here, but they've done a pretty good job overall. But I would love to see that. Just the pain that you have to deal with when like you get second because of a bad cereal sucks.
Yeah. Well, sorry. Go ahead, Jake.
I was just going to jump in because mine is similar. Like really, you did kind of take it a little bit, but it's just in general. I think it's going off that. For me, it would be having something implemented, like a role player role, just something that encourages. It doesn't have to be that. It could just anything that encourages you to play more sleepers in your lineup. So it's not just, all right, play the best available. And this is not just for Showdown, but just in general, the regular. I just think it makes it more fun. Like, it just makes it so there'd be more diversity of lineups. Similar to how DFS is, like you have to squeeze in some sleepers in there, some low price guys. It would be great if this would be the same way. And then it also just makes it more attractive of a game to play for people with lower bankrolls, because that's just one position where they don't have to spend up crazy. So it makes your overall lineup like cheaper to make, which means it's an easier entry for people too, which would be nice. And then also it's, in my opinion, it's just fun. It's just fun to like gamble a little bit on like a guy who might go off who's under the radar.
Well, that's
I
the
don't
thing
know.
too.
I honestly don't know the best way that they can implement this for Reignmakers. If it is a role player role, maybe that could result in like them having to constantly update that like every week. If one role player guys goes off, and then he becomes super expensive in his own right because you have to play a role player. So I'm not sure if that's the best route of going that way, but something that encourages you to play more of these role player guys and be able to differentiate your lineup is probably the biggest thing I would like to see.
Yeah, so like I was going to say, that's the thing. It's like we don't want this to be solved right off the bat. We don't want it to be where it's like these are the players you play, you'll cash almost every time. The best thing I've seen is what So Rare does with NBA, where each player has a score based on their average fantasy points for. I think, well, with NBA, it's over the last like 2 weeks or something like that, but they could do that like last 3 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks for NFL. But it's a score that fluctuates, and so like you can't just keep playing the same players. You know, it's similar to pricing in DFS; it fluctuates based on how they're doing. But they also have a cap as well, and they have like, okay, you can only have 100 points in of player skill or whatever, but LeBron's 50, Luka's 60, something like that. And so if you play one of those players and you have to choose a bunch of like weak role players to fill in the rest of your lineups that put up 10, 15 points a week, and so that's what their score is to fit that 5 lineup. So that fluidity, that way of design, I think would really expand the number of rosters. It would make serials less of a thing, but you know, if you're playing showdowns or if you're playing really chalk lineup, serials will still matter. It'll just matter a little bit less. And it's just really going to differentiate the lineups. And yeah, if you're playing Patrick Mahomes, like this game, if you're playing Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and AJ Brown, then you're going to have to play like a kicker and Sky Moore or somebody like that for your last 2, because that's all that will fit in. Like that's what would be awesome, is if they had something that was more dynamic, something that forced you to either go stars and scrubs or a balanced lineup type thing, like they do in DFS. And there's ways to do that. It's just, do they want to do it or not? I think it would bring in a bigger audience too if people don't feel like they have to spend thousands of dollars just to have a chance at winning. If they could just, play the garbage lineups. But we saw. Sorry to go on a little rant, but we saw so many times. We remember how cheap the Jacksonville Jaguars were. We remember how cheap Zay Jones and all these other players were. That halfway through the season, at the end of the season, you needed these players to win the weeks, and it just went off. But that's really the strategy right now. That's going to be what a lot of people that have been in the streets are going to go through. They're going to go through the guys that either are injured and coming in halfway through the season. They're going to go for the people that could break out, but they're rookies or whatever, or they're on teams that have a lot of unknowns, and they're just going to scoop up all those cards because they're going to be cheap. And then you're just hoping that halfway through the season, these guys take off like the Jags did the later half of the season. So that's the strategy. But I would just love, sure, that works early on if you want to do that. But if they start going off halfway through the season, suddenly they get more and more expensive, and you can't do that anymore. So I would just love to see some dynamicness. I agree. Just make it like, I initially thought expanded rosters, but that's just going to increase the cost. I like expanded rosters, but that's just going to increase how much it costs to start playing. And so I think if they did dynamic weighting of players that just shifted. And they kind of do that with the superstar tagging and removing of superstars, but they could just make it dynamic across the board and just make it a lot easier to differentiate your lineup because you're forced to.
Yeah, I love that. Go ahead, Jake or Ruthless.
I was just going to say quickly, maybe the superstars are every 8 weeks, but they did that like every week or every 2 weeks or something.
Yeah, that's that too.
Game to game, like, the point system or whatever. And even if it was like automated, like a player did this or whatever, and it's just like, okay, cool. That I like that idea. It's a really good idea.
And you're going to get. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
you're going to get some complaining no matter what you do. If like we saw it when people turned on and turned off superstars, people complain. It's like, oh no, now my card is way less valuable. Oh yeah, like these are so expensive, I can't afford it, but I have to have it. And one of the mistakes that I made was buying way too many of what I thought were the best players for way too high of a price that probably maybe 1 or 2 times was needed in the optimal. They always helped you cash, but like optimal plays, it's football. It's random. So
yeah, I totally agree. I love the I'm highly intrigued by the idea of some sort of role player or depth chart, like multiplayer, multiplier or bonus system. I think that would be really cool to integrate and give a lot of life to kind of the back end of your portfolio. So yeah, a lot of good ideas. JJ, did you have anything specifically that you wanted to touch on that hasn't been touched on that you'd like to see into next season?
Yeah, I mean, just kind of on a similar note, but more so marketplace. Like I think I said it before. I'd just love to see it if you could trade down cereals. I mean, just take the floor plus a different, or sorry, just take some money plus a different cereal. Just somehow implemented in that system, because there's players that have really good cereals that don't even want to, don't care about that. Maybe they just want to play one lineup every week, right? But if I can get some cash out of my number 3 and then still have the same player, that'll be pretty sick. So I'd love to see something like that, because right now the juice is way too high, right? You'd have to sell your card, the other guy'd have to sell your card, and that's 10% off both. Off of both of those. And if you wanted to sell it to each other, the only way is to just for a lower price. The only way is to just kind of hope someone doesn't snipe you, right? Send the links in advance, and then maybe make a macro or something to click on the specific part of the screen. But I just wish it was simpler, right? I did a lot of deals for a lot of lower cereals, and ended up having to pay. I paid less than what the marketplace was, but it would be nice if there was just some sort of trade-in system. But yeah, totally agree on the role player stuff. Showdown again is something we all identified here as something highly lucrative to target, just because people wouldn't play it optimally. And I think part of the reason it felt so bad is because the showdowns were so bad this season. I mean, a lot of the primetime games had Denver or Green Bay, right?
The Broncos, woo!
Nobody wants.
We had a nice Colts run. That late season Colts run was something else. Huh?
Jesus Christ, yeah. Most of the teams were just terrible. I mean, Giants had a bunch of games too. Eagles had a ton, so that was a good team. But bunch of stinkers. And I think had the games been more competitive, right? If Denver was a great team, I think people might have complained less, right? Because it's a lot easier to invest in those players if you think they're going to make a playoff run and buy the good cereals, right? Ahead of time. Just imagine if Buffalo had 6 playoff games, 6 primetime games, right? 6 showdowns. And so you'd be pretty freaking comfortable picking up all those players at good cereals, especially early in the season. But yeah, just like Derek said, I think something that I'll do differently next season is just pick up more of these third or second tier players that should someone go down, just it becomes the nuts every time, right? We've seen it too many times this season. So,
not only that, but even if you didn't want to play them, the price spikes in those cars were just way more than anything else.
Yeah,
you had you'd have Breece Hall that wasn't doing much at the beginning of the season. Then when he takes off and suddenly you 2-3x whatever
$500. Yeah. And he started at like 150 or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, not only that, but like even if they don't ever play for you in the whole season, you can still use them in late swap. And that's one of the big things. Like how many of us are paying like $15, $20, $30 for these backup players just to fucking have them dead so we can exchange them out, right? So, and they retain their value till the end. So.
That was another surprise this season was, we all knew like it all dropped off, but it dropped off at a much slower rate than I expected it to. And, once we knew what the playoff teams were, they just stayed stable until their team fell out of the playoffs. Like we didn't just continue to see a decline. I figured like everybody would think, okay, 1 less week, so they go down in price. But because people weren't sure which ones were going to make it and not, it's like until they fell or lost, and then the price fell off a cliff. But until that, you still made money. Like I made a lot of my money back just selling off a bunch of the playoff players during the playoff season, because I was thinking it's like, well, I'm just going to have to eat a big loss because of all this. And then I'm like, holy crap, I actually made a profit this season because everybody's willing to pay premium prices even when there's only 1-2 weeks left.
And they're paying premiums for those low cereals, right?
Yeah.
I'm making lineups as we speak. I just spent $400 on a rare lineup just because I got to pay up for these fucking low cereals, right? Things that I dumped for like a quarter of the price for all of them before New Year's. So, lesson learned. Yeah,
we all like gambling, but I mean, like that's the thing. It's like you make a gamble. You try and figure out who you think the playoff teams are, and you use them. You know that you can hold on to them. You don't need to sell them off if they're pretty much guaranteed for the playoffs, and you can use them as long as you want. And when you're ready to sell, go ahead and sell. You can make the bets and they could fall out, but that's part of the fun. Like, you're looking at teams like Detroit and thinking, okay, do I sell? They're right on the bubble of the playoff. They just need this and this, and they're in or out. It's like you can still play them. How important they are for this week versus the amount of profit that I could make selling them. And so it's just kind of this little mind gamble thing that you're trying to figure out. At the same time, there's like, if you want to play, you don't have to worry about losing a ton of money on it. Like I really thought that halfway through the season it was just going to tank. Like I thought everybody that was going to be sick of Reignmakers, and everybody was like, I was done. And then they dropped down to like everything's $1, everything's $2 because nobody wants to do it. But that didn't happen. I mean, they did go down in price, but it's just little by little each week.
And so the tiers down made sense week to week. It wasn't anything too surprising or.
Yeah, the market was rational, which is not what we're used to seeing.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you, sorry, Poop. One last thing. Like if you bought a good cereal of one of these stud players and they made it to the Super Bowl, you're selling them for more than you bought them at the start of the season, and that's something that I think is absolutely nuts. Like I wouldn't have expected, right? For example, a Jalen Hurts number 1 sold 2 days ago for $1,800. Right at Elite, and so I know that was going for less at the start of the season. So it's just
probably
one
get
of those
that for
things.
$1,000 at the start. Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. People are paying up for all these lower ones because you have no chance of winning otherwise if you want to play the optimal.
Yep. That's good advice too for next season too. Is if you are going to go, if you want to not take risks, you don't want to play the second, third string players, and you just want to buy the studs, pay a little bit extra for the low cereals, because Showdown, like we have a year's worth of data at this point. We know exactly what to expect. Showdown, everybody knows at this point. Get the low cereals for Showdown. That's the way you make the most money. If you're going to be playing Showdown, you want the low cereals. So if you're going to just be buying a bunch of the studs, you don't want to play like too off the board chalky, then getting those low cereals is just going to keep your value that much longer. And like you said, it may increase in value regardless of how they do, if they make it far enough into the playoffs.
That's the cheat code. And that's the cheat code, we've been on. I know, JJ and everyone here has been harping on all season long, right? It's all about the cereals at the end of the day for some of especially for these tighter slates. I'll also add, right, of course, focus on the backups, the 2s and the 3s, but rookies, man. Rookies, early season values on rookies, scoop them up, accumulate them as much as possible. All it takes is really 1 or 2 of them to hit big time, into that superstar status realm, or maybe a cut below, for it to really pay off for you. So from that sense, I think that's a good area of focus going into next year.
Yeah,
like rookie QBs, just get them all. Like just eventually they'll get in. Desmond Ridder eventually got in.
How many backup QBs did we have to play for the Showdown slates too? So backup QBs are like really valuable, because in Showdown it's like, well, I need 2 QBs. I almost always need 2 QBs, but this stupid Jimmy Garoppolo is $150 on rare. It's just. It was just like, it was one of those things where I just accepted I'm not winning this week because I'm not paying this price, but I know people are. And so just having the Jimmy Garoppolo's in case Trey Lance goes down for next. We saw so much of that this year and how much it mattered in showdown slates, and so just grabbing a bunch of those and thinking, okay, this guy is halfway decent. He's a good game manager, and if the starter goes down, then he will skyrocket for those showdowns. So
yeah, that's all it takes. All it takes.
Well, I'm curious what y'all think. If you're buying a Cooper Kupp, would you buy an Allen Robinson? Like, I don't even know if they're going to be on the team, but I'm just using an example. Or like just to protect yourself. Like, I think I should have been buying QBs and their backup every time that I bought a QB. Like, I didn't think about that until this year.
I would say the biggest value pumps are 1, rookies, 2, backup quarterbacks, and 3 would be ambiguous backfield running backs, guys that can wide receivers. It's really tough for someone to just come in and then just go off because the starter's injured. Yeah. They're usually just going to shift a little bit between everyone else. But if it's a Derrick Henry starting running back and he goes down, then his backup's price is going to skyrocket because they know they're going to use him in a bell cow role. If it's a Zeke Pollard situation and Zeke goes down, then Pollard's price is going to skyrocket. Rookies that have a lot of potential, like Garrett Wilson's and Breece Hall's and stuff like that, but aren't showing too much because they're rookies. Like, rookies don't come in. It's very rare for them to come in and go become a stud immediately off the bat. So those guys will go up, and then you need a quarterback. Like, you need a quarterback for a team if you don't play it. So the backups of that. But yeah, tight ends and wide receivers, trying to bet the backups on that. You might see a tiny price increase.
I meant more for injuries, not for it's like to mitigate the injury risk. Because I had a Cooper Kupp that I bought, and then he went down, and I lost $900. So it's like, if I'm buying Cooper Kupp, like, maybe I should be buying, have some sort, because then Allen Robinson will go up. Yeah, maybe
every single time.
Well, he does, but it's just not as much as the other things, because most of the people playing this have been in DFS long enough to know that, like, someone else isn't going to step up and be an absolute stud unless they're already pretty good.
Yeah.
And then so the price will go up, but I don't think it will offset the injury. I think the advice for that is just don't put too much of your money into just a few players. Spread it out enough where, you took a hit, but you still have all these other players, and because everybody's going to take some hits unless you're playing one team and you get really lucky. Someone's going to go down, someone's going to get an ACL tear or something like that, and you're going to lose some money. But as far as like trying to mitigate wide receiver risk, it's just one of those things that you got to tell yourself, okay, if I'm buying 20 Cooper Kupps, am I okay with losing all that money if he gets injured? Or do I want to take only 4 Cooper Kupps and spread it around and get some Devontae Adams, some Justin Jefferson, some Stephon Diggs and stuff like that? And that's like, it sucked because, like, I spread it around, and I would lose a couple $100 when someone would tear their ACL. But at the same time, I would see people that said, like, I put all my chips into this player and I just lost thousands. And it's like, you can't just like immediately scoop up Allen Robinson. It's like, all right, I'm going to make back all those fantasy points that this guy is. It's like Allen Robinson. Yeah, you might need him for showdowns, and he might be good for showdowns, but you're not going to make the same as if you were with the Cooper Kupps.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I think the only time you should be replacing them, or like, I guess, hedging against it with wide receiver 2s or 3s is if they have multiple showdowns, right? Like, I think Rams was one of those that had a lot of showdowns. So I personally picked up Stafford's and Robinson's, but a lot of the time, what Derek said and what Jake said, it's really valid for those positions. A lot of times when your wide receiver 1 goes down, or even your wide receiver 2 goes down, it just makes the offense a lot worse. Right. Yeah. It's just a lot harder for the others to produce. T. Higgins and Boyd, they're all capable players. So that one's a little insulated from that. And they still went down even when Jamar Chase was out. So, it's just one of those things where a lot of those players are replaceable. A lot of those players don't have as much of guaranteed amount of workload, right? Whereas the running back and the quarterbacks do. I'd say the one where I'd probably throw an exception there is if there's like a tight end that gets all the work, and then there's one that will get a lot of the work behind them. It was Isaiah Likely, right?
Yeah.
There was no card there for Isaiah Likely, but that's probably like one of the only situations where I think that applies. If there was a solid number 2 in Philly for a tight end, I'd say that applies too. Like Goddard,
Noah Gray in case Travis Kelce goes down.
Yeah, exactly. But otherwise, no, I wouldn't hedge with these wide receiver 2s or 3s.
Great stuff, fellas. That was some meaty, juicy conversation, and I think a lot of good stuff to tie into our approach for next season. As we kind of close this out.
I did make my money back on Cooper the first few times. Like, he helped me out in Showdown. So, my investment was worked out, but
I'm happy for you to clarify that for us, Big Ruth. Thank you. Yeah. All right, gentlemen, great stuff. Thank you for touching on all of that strategy and tips as we kind of move into the end of the season here. Wanted to pivot and refocus back onto the game itself. Jake has pulled up the line for the game and kind of where Vegas has landed. Jake, do you have any thoughts here? Where the totals landed and thoughts into the game itself?
Yeah, we got a 51 point over under here. Eagles are a 1.5 point favorite, slight favorite here, but pretty close overall at this neutral site game here. Obviously it's the Super Bowl, so it should be close. It should be. These are two of the best offenses in the league here, and also two defenses who have both been playing pretty well. Eagles have had a really good defense all year. Chiefs have been leaky for sure at times, but the last couple of games, their defense has held up really nicely. So excited to see how they perform here in the Super Bowl. I guess it's really good. Eagles offenses, both quarterbacks also dealing with some injuries coming into the game. We had Mahomes get a high ankle sprain, and Hurts also hurt his shoulder as well. They've had 2 weeks now since the previous game to rest up, so they should be decently healed. I don't know as far as if they're 100% yet. Maybe they're still ailing a little bit, but they should at least be in good enough shape to play some great football on Sunday. Curious to hear any thoughts you guys have here.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I do think on both ends the quarterback injuries play somewhat of a role. I don't know how significant, but talk about a high ankle and a throwing shoulder. It's always some room for concern, but how much it ultimately impacts the game itself, we'll see. Flag plants or individual players, I'd hate to steal the term flag plant, but players that you guys are focused in on kind of being your guys for this week and that you're going to be building your lineups around. Obviously, you have the Mahomes and the Hurtses of the world, but anyone that has caught your eye that you're really looking to jam in there as part of your lineup build process this week?
Yeah, a guy who I'm definitely going to try to be overweight, especially in the captain spot, is AJ Brown. Just because I think he's one of those guys where it's going to be tough if you're not playing a quarterback like Mahomes and Hurts. They just have such a high scoring expectation that it's going to be tough for skill players to outscore them in these games, especially Mahomes, who spreads it around, and Kansas City there. I think AJ Brown's definitely one who can do it. We've seen this insanely huge upside during the season, and those are the kind of guys you want to play if you're playing these tournaments and want to get the highest score. So I think he's had a couple rougher games the last 2 games, so that might also hurt. They might also bring his ownership down a little bit from what it normally would be because of these couple duds. But he was dealing with a minor hip injury. He got hurt a little bit in the Giants game, and then he was also kind of dealing with it going into the 49ers game. But again, it was pretty minor, and he is practicing in full now. They had 2 weeks rest. I think he should be fully good to go now. And this Chiefs secondary has gotten burnt quite a bit throughout the season as well. And he's obviously an amazing player. I'm sure he'll be a huge part of their game plan as well. So I'm pretty big on AJ Brown.
I guess that's a good moment for me to jump in and give my flag plant, which I think is Devonta Smith.
Hey.
I just think he is that dude. I also like. I mean, to Jake's point, like it's a decent matchup for the wide receivers against KC, and like it kind of is almost a one. It was definitely AJ Brown earlier as the one. And then Devonta slowly crept up, and like I just think Devonta is so efficient, and like just seems to make these grabs. I mean, granted that play for San Francisco, I guess, wasn't a catch, but like, man, was it a close one? But whenever he's called upon to just be there, it seems like he is, and I just want to say I hope it's his coming out party of like, yeah, this dude is undersized. Doesn't seem to get the same respect. He's even a Heisman Trophy winner, and people just don't treat him as like 1B wide receiver here.
Yeah, I'm with you there on Devontae Smith. He's been solid all season. I think, I've said it many times before. I think Eagles win the Super Bowl. I think I've been saying that since week 8 or something.
Mm-hmm.
So the only reason I bet on the Bengals is because I can't fucking root for the Eagles. That's like rooted for Satan. As a Giants fan over here. So hopefully I'm wrong, but I just think the Eagles are just way better. Like Poop said on paper, but also in execution. Last week, I think, I don't think Hurts was healthy, and that's what it's going to come down to. 2 weeks ago. But it's going to come down to is he healthy or not, and of course Mahomes as well. But all things equal, I think Eagles are just way better. And, I think Devontae Smith is going to carve up that defense. So that's where I'm going with the flag plant.
Love it. What about you, Thur? Do you have your eyes on anyone in particular this week?
Devonta Smith was mine, honestly, but
a lot of Devontae love. Love it.
Yeah. I think the most like surprising captain to win it would be probably Miles Sanders. So that would probably be my flag plant if you want to get different and you're trying to just stick it to everyone that's confident they know how this game's going to go. Then that would probably be mine.
Yeah, I love it. I definitely had Devontae in mind as well. Big fan of the guy, IRL, but just outside of that, such a playmaker. I'll throw Kelsey out there. I know that's not a super shocking pick by any means, but look, when the Chiefs need to go get it, he's their guy. And if the Eagles do somehow put it on the Chiefs early in this game, then they're forced into throwing the ball more than anticipated, then Kelsey will get his looks. And I think, I love the AJ Browns and the Devontae Smiths, but if you were to put your money on a guy to get 10 plus targets in this game, it probably would be Kelsey. So from that standpoint, I think he's a safe bet. And again, not a shocker there, but I think one, in a game like this, you could see him maybe being the game breaking talent that is needed for him.
I mean, just also the way that the matchup sets up where they're actually good in the secondary. And as far as, it seems like their D-line's like elite and possibly one of the best, like a generational D-line. And then their cornerbacks are good, but the linebackers are less so. So it kind of lends to Kelsey's matchup as well, especially when the wide receivers get shut down.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I mean, as formidable as Philly's defense is, and it depends on how they play it. They could match up Bradbury on Kelsey. He's got the size to match up on him if they want to go that route. Even their safety play with Chauncey, Gardner Johnson back there. He can match up very nicely and cover Kelsey. So they have some chess pieces they can put on Kelsey for sure. And I'm sure they'll look to double him all day. And they know, it's not going to be a big secret. Kelsey's going to be a big piece of what the Chiefs are trying to do. But yeah, I would say if you can attack Philly in an area, it's probably the middle of the field, getting away from that secondary, which is pretty elite. So it sets up well for Kelsey, I think. We'll see how it shakes out. Great stuff, fellas. Looking forward to it. We've made it this far. Finally made it to the big game here, and I think it's a matchup similar to how the entire playoffs have shaken out. A lot of good matchups throughout the course of the postseason here. No different here for the Super Bowl. Two of the elite teams in the NFL, and I think just the way we like to draw it up year in and year out for Super Bowl matchup. So, awesome. Well, that all being said, this is the last Make It Rain show of the season.
We made it rain.
What's that?
We made it rain.
We made it rain. We sure did. Lots of great stuff. I mean, we've had a lot of fun doing it. Started off, just really having some football discussion in MVHQ and some of our chats, and just kind of blossomed into a little bit more of a formal production. Really, our first full-fledged production here at MVHQ. It's really helped us kind of template out and formulate our production items here moving forward, and been a lot of fun doing it with you guys week in and week out, and I really can't thank you guys enough. Our production specialist behind the scenes, Big Mac Attack, has put together a little season in review video that we'd like to share with everyone here live on set. No one has. Well, I am the only one that has seen it so far, so this will be a surprise.
Oh, look,
for
Jake
everyone.
left. He didn't want to see it.
Oh no!
He didn't want to see it. He didn't want to cringe.
Got too excited.
Didn't hit the wrong button when he closed that. Just don't judge us when we're cracking Dead Fellas packs, even though we're probably losing $40 on each open.
One of us just so happened to be me. Every blind squirrel finds a nut every once in a while. Hit for a $20,000 payday. Derek, Jake, and the 20K winner himself, Mr. JJ. What a sweat. What a win.
Hey.
How you feeling, my man?
Can't believe it. We did it back to back, guys. What's going on? I guess each host.
Yep.
If you can't afford to go up to it in your tier, then I would go down a tier. I would sell those guys off, and I'd go down a tier.
I think unlocked it for us and the crew here early on was you kind of identifying that there's players that you absolutely don't want to play.
Cereals matter a lot in Showdown just because there's such a limited player pool.
That's one thing that you're going to see so much in Core. People are going to be playing whatever their optimizer spits out.
You front ran me on Saquon. Had him written down. I love that call.
I don't care what level you play at. You're a hardcore player. It's a game for hardcore players.
At some point, I need to stop spending money and start making money in this season. So
I've been buying players.
No refunds on that advice.
Where do you think the prize pool money comes from?
Exactly.
Prize pool fairy?
I don't want to say the Ravens because I went back to the Huntley well twice.
I also think it's fascinating because I've never really dealt with an asset that kind of has like a, I guess, half-life almost.
Denver. Oh my god.
Oh my god.
overpriced. Malik Willis. If he's over $1, he's overpriced. So yeah.
Yep.
Anyway, let me not get into my 49ers are overrated rant.
Who's y'all's most like you can't stand it when you see they're doing well player in the NFL? Mine's Jamal Williams. Whenever I see him go off,
We'll start from the bottom up. That is probably the last person I want to see.
I think that this, like, it's kind of like maybe it's another Mike Evans thing, and I'm just going to keep losing money.
because if you're playing Baker Mayfield, you can just throw away your money right now.
Boom, boom. All right, here we go. All right, well, that was fun. Thank you very much, Big Mac Attack, behind the scenes, putting that together for us. Always good to kind of reflect on the long season that was. A lot of fun stuff, a lot of good information. We'll kick it over to Ruthless here for a little closing statement. Go ahead, Ruth.
Yeah, it's kind of been fascinating because this was mostly me just spamming the chat occasionally, and then JJ and a few others being like, Reignmakers is a scam, blah, blah, blah. Like the top holders, I don't know. And I'm just like, I don't know, man. I just keep opening packs and like, this seems fun. And then eventually it kind of like people, Jake and JJ and Derek and Poop, everyone's just like, oh, this is fun, opening packs. And it became kind of like this. We created a chat within our own Discord, for it. And then from the chat, everyone started running with it. Everyone unloaded the clip or emptied the clip for all the cereals, packs, cereals, whatever.
Yeah.
And then put this, and everyone here, like Mac and Relic, and everyone behind the scenes, like put this show together, and what 15, 18, 20 episodes, I don't know, but either way, like, well done, gents. This is super fun. I'm glad I could come on here and there, and yeah, I'll see you next season.
Yep.
Well said, well said. I blame Cody because Cody would not stop fucking opening packs. And then we all would open packs. And we've opened probably 1,000 packs in the first day.
People streaming, you know how bad the minus EV this is. Oh, I don't care, I bought 5 more, let's go.
And that was the fun of it, right? You're right. The evolution of it has been really fun. Rufus, obviously, we're all big NFL fans at heart, first and foremost, and to kind of be able to take it to this level and have some fun with it and involve the community in addition to MVHQ staff. It's really been everything we could have imagined from that standpoint. So very well said. Appreciate you coming on and helping to spearhead it. Yeah, that pack rip fever, that was some DJ that I think we can all relate to. It was really it kind of took us back in time a little bit, and so had a lot of fun doing that. So that all being said, again, thank you guys very much for taking the time week in, week out, both you guys here as hosts and everyone tuning in week to week. It's meant a lot to us, and we will look forward to picking it back up next season. We'll see how the offseason shakes out, and we'll have more to report there as things move along. But until then, good luck on the Super Bowl slate this weekend, and let's make it rain into the offseason. Ciao, everyone.
See
Good
ya.
luck, everyone. Bye.
Good season.